If you have ever felt someone that you love who is no longer here, and you've ever felt their presence or their comfort or their connection close to you, and then immediately questioned yourself, thought maybe you were nuts or that you were imagining it or talked yourself out of it in some way, then this episode is for you.
So self-service, that's the way. Welcome to Soul Talk, shine today.
Welcome to Soul Talk, where spirit meets real life. This is a space for real conversations, conscious choice, and always choosing light, even when life feels messy, uncertain, or tender. Hi, I'm Sayana Johnston, and I'm really glad that you're with me today. Thanks for joining. Okay, friends, so before we get started, what I like to do is I like to take a moment to just get us present. Wherever you are, however you're feeling right now, whatever's been going on in your day, we're just going to take a nice, slow breath together. And as we breathe, I want to invite you to call in your spirit team, your angels, your guides, and your loved ones in spirit. Just bringing them into presence with you. Today, we're talking about connection beyond this physical world. Angels, loved ones in spirit that have passed, and what really does happen after the physical life ends. What happens to love after life ends? This topic, this podcast isn't here to convince you about anything. You already have belief systems that feel very strong and very ingrained. You may be somewhere in the middle where things are shifting and changing, and you're actually trying to figure out what you believe and maybe learning how to be aware of the experiences that you are having. What my intention is for this episode is to help normalize what so many people already feel, are already connected to, but maybe aren't always feeling safe to talk about, or just don't talk about it. Maybe that's for fear of what other people are going to think. Maybe it's because you don't trust yourself. Maybe it's because you haven't learned how to tap into your intuition in greater and deeper ways. And my hope is that after this conversation, that you will recognize that connection with spirit is so much more than what we were taught to believe. Because, I think that for a lot of us, we look at grief and we were trained in one way to look at grief. And what I've discovered is that grief looks very different for everyone. In 25 years in this field and working as a medium and working with people on a variety of different levels through a variety of different challenges in life and major, major losses, whether it's loss of parents or children or siblings or spouses, and whether that was through suicide or disease or murder. There have always been people that grieve differently. And when grief shows up and looks different to people, I think that some people aren't sure if they're handling their grief in the right way, if they're doing the right thing. And I don't think there's a right way. Sometimes grief is loud and deep, and sometimes it's quiet and calm. And sometimes in the beginning, it's not as difficult as it is later. It shows up like years later in ways that aren't expected. And sometimes it feels like it'll never end. And I think alongside of grief, there's also something else, and that is moments of comfort, moments of connection, um, moments of experiences that aren't always understood, dreams that seem different or feel different, a presence that feels familiar but maybe can't be explained. And oftentimes, what I hear is people having these experiences and even being excited about the experiences, but instead of trusting those moments and trusting those experiences, a lot of times people question them. You know, was it real? Am I imagining it? Is it just um, wishful thinking or positive thinking? And not even do they ask themselves those questions, but oftentimes if they share it with other people ask those questions, right? Like, maybe you're just making it up, or that's really what you're hoping it is. You just want it to be that way. And I wonder if this is something that you've experienced, because I think it's common, at least in my experience with the clients that have come to me, that people do get into this questioning place. And what if there's no question to be asked? What if none of those is true? What if actually you're just in connection, and you're in connection in a different way than what you're used to? What if you're experiencing connection in a new way? Um, I often uh, share a story around the fact that when I started doing this work professionally, that the way that spirit presented their connection and communication with us in the physical is that when I'll tell the whole process. So that oftentimes, once our loved one has passed, they've dropped their body, they've died, and their spirit continues, that we spirit said we want to look at it as if our loved one just moved to another country, and it's another country where there's a foreign language. So I'm just going to use the country China, for example. So your loved one moved to China, and they were so excited, they wanted to move to China, they were so excited to go to China, they've always wanted to go to China. And you're sad. You're like, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go anywhere. But you know that your loved one has always wanted to go there. And so you recognize that they are going to be filled with joy and experience and excitement and newness and new opportunities. And so even though it's hard, you know they're going to leave. And so they leave and they go to China. And then they call you one day and they say, okay, I'm here. I'm so excited. It's amazing. But I have to tell you, I'm not going to be able to communicate with you the way that I have before. Now you're going to have to learn Chinese. You're going to have to learn how to communicate in my language. Now, obviously, they don't have to learn Chinese, but you do need to learn how to communicate with the spirit world. You do need to learn how to translate that information, how to tune in, how to tap into your intuition, how to open up to the signs and to the messages. And when you do that, and when you are open, then when you receive those messages, you feel a connection, and you feel an openness, and you feel a presence. And even though they're a far away and you'll never see them physically again, you know they're okay, and you know they're happy, and you know they're on their soul's path. And it's very similar to the shift that we can, if we choose to make, in the grief process, and where our loved ones are now in the spirit world, this beautiful, amazing space of love and light and unconditional love and healing and connection. And we may not see them, and we may not be able to visit them physically, but on a soul level and spiritually, if we begin to learn the language of their form of communication, which we're in training for, then you never lose that connection. That also reminds me of a story that some of you have probably read, and I actually contributed to a book that was titled "The Invisible Thread." And the story, it's like an old story that really appears in a lot of different cultures in a variety of different forms. But basically, the idea of it is it talks about this invisible thread that connects souls. And that when two beings are connected by love, that a thread is woven between them. And that thread isn't connected to the physical body at all. It actually belongs to the soul. And so when someone leaves this world and their physical body dies, and when they leave and their spirit rises, that the thread doesn't get cut, it gets stretched. And as it gets stretched, it 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 stretches and it softens and it doesn't end. But it changes the way that it's connected, right? It changes how the energy is held. And I think when we can apply this to real life, it really explains why connection doesn't disappear after death. And actually, in some cases, certainly in my experience and many of my clients' experiences over the years, not only does it not disappear, but it actually can get stronger. And I think that the idea of the invisible thread explains why love feels so close still and so present, and why that guidance and that support and the comfort comes oftentimes when you need it the most, right? When you're asking for that sign, when you're struggling, when you're looking for help, when you are in fear, because what it starts to teach us is that love doesn't require a body. What it what it needs, what it requires is connection. And connection isn't physical, it's actually energetic. And any of you that have a loved one that's living in the spirit world now, that has had experiences likely knows that. But there may be some of you that are new to this concept and or desperately want to have a greater connection with your loved one in spirit. So I thought I would share with those of you that maybe are newer to my work a little bit about why this topic is so important to me, and why I teach and share about it really from a very open perspective. Although I understand that there are people that um, have very different perspectives and understandings. Um, for me, I have been aware of the spirit world since I was a teenager, and I actually think at times before that, but not enough that I have really solid conscious memory that I could share and say, okay, this, at this time, this is what I was experiencing. But I can say that at the age of 13, I started seeing and feeling and experiencing the spirit world. And when I talk about the spirit world, what I mean by that is I'm talking about our angels, our spirit guides, our loved ones in spirit, ascended masters, and even the God of our understanding. So, whatever that is to you, maybe it's source, maybe it's creator, maybe it is universe. maybe it's God, but the God of your understanding, whatever you might call that. And so, for those that are new, you may not know the story. Those of you that have been around for a while, you do. But I felt like this was an important time as we are opening up this podcast and helping people to understand uh, the foundation of where this all began, because for me, it started at a very young age. For some of you that might be joining and listening to this conversation, maybe it started when a circumstance or a situation happened in your life. Oftentimes, it comes through death or a divorce or a loss or a diagnosis or disease. So these are ways that oftentimes we start to have a greater, deeper connection with the spirit world, and also a deeper understanding when the really, really hard things in life start to hit us. And so in my experience, because it happened at a young age, I think I have been blessed to have a different perspective of death throughout my life. Not that the deaths of the people around me have been easy, not that I didn't have incredible amounts of and waves of grief at different times for the loss of the physical experience as I once knew it. And I also had an awareness of the fact that it never ends and that the soul continues, which I believe brought me a level of comfort that many people that don't have that belief, or that are just beginning to walk through the journey of grief or loss or illness, um, maybe haven't experienced yet. So a little bit of background. As I said, at 13 years old is when kind of the doors opened for me. And basically the experience that I had is that I went to bed one night like any other night, just 13 years old. And I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And when I woke up, I looked at my clock and I went to roll over. And as I rolled over, there was above my bed this colorful, beautiful um, winged being. And it was, I felt so calm and so at peace and so like I literally just laid there in this presence for I don't know how long. It was probably just a couple of minutes. But in that time, I was infused with this energy of absolute unconditional love, infused. And I kind of absorbed, took this energy of unconditional love on to a point that I felt so calm and so relaxed that I literally rolled over and went back to sleep. So I obviously had this sense of peace and calm and love and connection and support and like all of this goodness that my mind didn't even click into anything else. So the next morning, I woke up and then the head started kicking in. Then the head started going, oh my God, what was that? Where did that come from? Why did it show up? Why is it here? I knew that I felt safe. I knew that I felt connected. I knew that I felt um, peace in the moment. But now that my head kicked in, I didn't. I didn't feel that peace because now I started thinking about it and I started figuring it out. And how many of you have ever had an opportunity or a circumstance where that has happened, where you have an experience that feels really good, but then afterwards your brain starts kicking in and you're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? And what happened? And why did it happen? And we just start going, going, going. And so that's what happened to me. And so I ran downstairs and my mom was downstairs and I said, I told her what happened. And she said to me, she said, well, Sonny, that's your guardian angel. And I said, I don't think I have one of those. And she said to me, "Of course you have a guardian angel, Sonny. Everybody has a guardian angel." And I said, "I don't think I have one." And she said, "Well, why wouldn't you have one? Everybody has one." I said, "Well, if I have one, then they're either not doing their job or they just suck. They're not a great guardian angel." Which in my mind meant that I didn't have one because, and here's the reasoning. Please remember, I'm 13, okay? But here was my reasoning is I'd had some difficult experiences. I had struggled to fit in the environment that I was living in. Um, and I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy. I was always trying to prove myself. I was always trying to fit in. And so my perspective was that if I had a guardian angel, my guardian angel would save me from all the pain that I had felt. I understand and I know that that's not the case anymore. Our guardian angels actually can't save us from our soul's journey, but they're here to help and support and guide and love us through the conscious and unconscious choices that we make. But at that time, at 13, that makes sense, right? Like, yeah, if they're not doing their job, like they're not doing their job, then, right? And so so I didn't really believe that that was the case. I didn't really think, yeah, I have a guardian angel and that's what I saw. But this is what changed that. This is what started to help me to turn the corner. Right after that, my mom said, "Well, Sonny, I have something to share with you." And she said, "Last night at 11 o'clock last night, right before I went to bed, I really felt guided to go in your room and pray over you." Now, this is not something that had happened before. This wasn't something that she had ever shared with me. It's not something that I had ever experienced. So this was unusual. I think unusual for both of us in the sense that she was called to go into my room that night. So at 11 o'clock at night, 2 hours before I woke up, she came into my room and she prayed over me and she said that in her prayer she'd asked God and the angels to protect me and to keep me safe. And I think that coming from the mom, from her perspective, um, she she was worried about my mental health and my emotional health because I was struggling. Um, and there were definitely times where I did not want to be here at that age. And so her invoking the angels and God into my space, her prayer um, was unusual and perfectly timed, divinely timed, I would say, because what I realized when she said that to me is that 2 hours later, 1 o'clock in the morning, that I had awakened to the manifestation of my mother's prayer. And what an amazing and beautiful gift that was. Now, I had the awareness that, okay, my mom asked for something and something happened. That's the thing that's different. But I wasn't sure what activated it. What made that happen? Was it just the question, just asking? Or was there more to it? I wasn't sure of that. And so what I recognize now that I didn't necessarily know then, because that was almost 42 years ago. This April, I think it'll be 42 years. And what it did, and maybe some of you are here right now, and maybe that's why you're watching this podcast, is it activated my curiosity. And if I look back through my life, what I recognize is that curiosity is a thing that always has guided me. And so I got curious. I got curious as to why that happened. I got curious as to why it happened at that particular time. I got curious as to, is it my guardian angel? Or who else is it? And then what I really got curious about is if that's true, and it is my guardian angel, and I have a guardian angel, and the guardian angel's always been with me, then how do they work and how do they listen and how do you communicate with them and how can I make that thing that happened that night where I felt so much peace and so much connection, how can I make that happen again? What can I do to experience that energy again? So that opened the door to curiosity. And and then of course there's lots of experience that happened after that. But to summarize it, what then happened is I started asking the angels, my guardian angel. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to create it again. I didn't know how to replicate what had happened. So I just started asking. So literally as a 13-year-old, my prayer was, "Hey, if you're still there, will you come back? Let me see you, let me feel you, let me experience you again." And the miraculous and amazing thing was that I did, and they did, and it was well, it was life changing, which is why we're here today. That journey shortly after that experience, not only did I start having experiences with the angels and the archangels and communication and messages and signs, and like I was taking dictation from them. Not only did I have that experience, but I also started having um, deceased loved ones of my friends start showing up. I started seeing spirits in the house that I was living in. I started recognizing the subtle shifts in energy that I started recognizing wasn't nothing, that it was actually something. And I started asking so that I got that guidance, got that support, got that um, um, direction um, and understanding, really. And so, probably about 3 or 4 months after that experience was the first time that I actually saw a deceased loved one. And I was with a friend of mine, and um, we were playing. We were 13, and we were playing. I think we were at a park, um, and and her grandfather appeared right next to her. He was just standing right next to her, and I knew her grandfather because I'd been friends with her for years. And I said and I knew that he had just died like 2.5 weeks ago, but he was right there. And so I said to her, I said, "Oh my God, your grandpa is here." And she's like, "Sonny, my grandpa can't be here. He's dead." And I said, "No, I mean like he's right next to you right now." And she's like, there's no way. He died." I said, I know, but they're still here. They're still with us. And that was now I recognize, and shortly after there, I recognize that was the beginning of where I learned that I probably shouldn't talk to everybody about this, that um, it might not be accepted by everybody, and that I might receive judgment and criticism and fear and be shamed for sharing some of those experiences. And so that moment, number one, I recognized that it wasn't safe to be who I was or share the experiences that I was having. The other thing that I recognized very quickly was that I needed to be very, very aware of if I was going to share it, who I was going to share it with. And so what happened at that time was, even though I was having these amazing experiences, and even though it was such a gift and it made me so curious and it was so exciting, at the very same time, I was like pushing it away and shutting down and disconnecting from it because I wanted to be normal and I didn't want to lose my friends. But that experience, I did lose a friend, and I also started then having some of the people around me start talking. The weird house on the corner, things like that. And so that gives you a little bit of background around um, this journey and the experience of where everything started. Now, it took me 15 years to get the courage and the strength and the thicker skin and the belief in myself to open that door completely to the world. I went in and out. I would step in, have really cool experiences, and then I'd shut down and disconnect and step in and shut down. Like this was very common actually for for longer than I'd like to say. So 15 years. But it opened the door, right? And it taught me, and I'm actually very grateful for all of those experiences now because I did need to have a thick skin when I came out and kind of came out of the spiritual closet, so to speak, and started talking about the fact that I saw angels, talked to dead people, communicated with the spirit world. I needed a thick skin. And luckily, even though it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it at the time, that helped me to stand in my power and to speak my truth and to be authentic, even though, back then, which was 30 something years ago, um, it wasn't accepted, right? It just wasn't. We didn't have media and the media wasn't having shows like this, and there weren't places to go and have talks and learn about these kinds of things. It was, I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. In Salt Lake City, Utah, this stuff was all underground. There were people that were doing it. There were people that were talking about it. My mom was part of that community and a big support to me. Um, but it wasn't something that was just out in the world. It was a different world then. Um, so so now, as I've been doing this professionally for 25 years, this will actually be the 26th year. And over all these years and the thousands of readings that I've done and the conversations that I've had with people, and the special moments that I have been with people, helping them navigate and walk through their grief, um, and the love that they feel like doesn't have a place to go any longer. There has always been that one truth that shows up consistently, constantly, and that is that love always survives death, and that connection, um, with our loved ones, just like the invisible thread, it continues even though the form of us changes, even though we drop the physical body, and the spirit rises, that connection continues. I have experienced it for myself. I have witnessed it uh, 1,000 times if I've witnessed it once. And I've seen how healing it can be for people when they begin to trust their experience with the spirit world instead of ignoring it or denying it or dismissing it. I wrote a book, um, about 10, 11 years ago now, called The Love Never Ends, Messages from the Other Side. And this book, I've received so many beautiful messages as a thank you for helping people to connect to that part of their um, soul that could acknowledge and honor the messages from the spirit world, which brought then peace and comfort. Now, part of connecting with our loved ones and an energy that oftentimes is kind of like a bridge between the spirit world and our deceased loved ones and us are the angels. And of course, the angels, as I just shared with you, is kind of the doorway for me. But angels often act as a bridge. They help us with our grief. They help to soften it. They help to soothe it. They help to comfort. They often help our loved ones in communicating with us, in ways that we can understand, that we can, catch maybe. And they also help to mm, maybe bring reassurance when our hearts are aching, bring validation when we're not sure, or maybe when we're questioning. And the angels bring in this energy of connection and support. So different energy, different frequency than the spirit world. The angelic realm is such a high frequency that they keep that connection. They support connection to the spirit world. And when we're talking spirit world, your spirit team, that's angels, the guides, the loved ones in spirit. Our angels also help to calm our emotions when they're heavy or when they feel out of control, and they bring like this sense of presence um and groundedness and steadiness when we're working to open our hearts, especially after we've gone through a major loss. And oftentimes that energy that people call peace that they feel within themselves is what I would say is actually presence. And so that our connection with spirit is like the most natural experience you can have. It's not this big to do. It's not like this big dramatic thing. It's actually, especially the angels, it's very subtle and warm and calm and gentle. With our deceased loved ones, it's a little bit stronger. There's a little bit more vibration to it. There's a little bit more density to it. But when our angels are there, they're bringing in this feeling of like being watched over and knowing that we're safe and that almost like just it's okay. And then our loved ones in spirit, they come in to give us the reminder that they're still here and that they're still present and that they didn't miss the wedding and that they are here for that newborn baby and that actually quite possibly even they are more connected to that newborn baby than you are because they were with the baby before it came into physical presence. They know that soul energy. Don't forget that, friends. They always tell me that the spirit world, and a lot of times this happens in readings, is that, "Hey, I don't want you to be all sad and heavy and dense. Like, I don't want to come hang out in that energy. Like, have a party, be celebratory, be excited." And that's hard to do because we're like, "Wait, I'm grieving the fact that you're not here." And they're like, "I know, but I am here. So, be lighthearted, be playful, give me some energy that I want to come and hang out in." Right? That's how they come to visit. That's what they want. They don't want to tap into low energy. They want to tap into high energy. And so our connection for me, our connection with my angels and my guides and my loved ones in spirit has been life altering. And it's super um fulfilling to me to not only have the experiences for myself and my own healing, but also to share those experiences with my community and with all of you. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about sharing and teaching about um, messages from our angels in the afterlife. And actually, I have a class I'm doing with the Shift Network, if you're familiar with that, that is starting on Monday. And as I've prepared for that, I've gotten so excited about it because it's the first time that I've taught a class in probably over a decade where I've gotten to teach a class week to week to week so that it offers time for experience and for processing and for healing. So I'm really excited about that class. If it's something you're interested in, you can go to the Shift Network and search my name and you'll find it. It starts on Monday, the 26th. And I love that it starts at 26. That's one of the reasons that I knew that I was being guided is because my grandmother's birthday was on January 26th. And when they said, we'll start the class on January 26th, I'm like, all right, Grandma, thanks. You got me too. So that's some of the ways that our loved ones show up, right? Is they give us these signs and these messages. Um, and they help us to recognize their presence. She's been out of body for 15 years, yet she's still here. And so if that's something you're interested in, then I would encourage you to go check out the Shift Network or just shoot my team an email and we'll send you the info. connect@schooloflight.biz. Um, so um, I hope that gives you a little bit of an understanding of where I come from and some of the um, experiences that have brought me to this space, and why I feel it's so important. We could add in right now, developing your intuition and encouraging you to start to trust in the experiences that you are having, because as you start to develop your intuition and you can discern the difference between your head and your heart, and you can start to listen to that guidance that shows up, that you can open yourself up to those messages. What it does is it brings more ease, more grace, more presence, more trust, more connection to ourselves, to humanity, and to our spirit team. And if you're wondering, you have a spirit team. Each and every one of you has a spirit. We all have a spirit team. We have angels. I always say we have a guardian angel and we have a master guide that are with us from beginning to end. And then we have our whole angelic team. We have a whole team of spirit guides, and we have our deceased loved ones. We also have ascended masters that come in at different times for different reasons. And this is an entire team of support. And so if you've ever wondered, ever, like, oh my gosh, I just feel so alone, what I want you to know is you're never alone. You are never alone. These are your these are your guardians. They are your um, light team. They are your spirit team. You can call that whatever it is that you want, but they help you and remind you of the light within you. And when that light is activated, when you're in presence, when you can actually get out of your head and into your heart and tune in and get a little bit quiet, you will see those messages activating over and over again. So we will be talking throughout this series, in this podcast. We'll be talking about all different types of mind, body, spirit, emotion, um, tools and techniques to feel better and to create consciously and intentionally, and to stand in our light and our power. And I don't know any other way to really um, expand that light without going here, without going to the spirit world, without connecting to that higher frequency. And so I hope that, number one, I hope that you're enjoying the podcast. And I hope also that you are willing to just open yourself up. If you've been walking through grief, I honor you. I know the journey that um, can be, and I know the journey that can be. And what I mean by that is I know the journey of the low end of that and what it can be, but I also know the journey of the high end. The difference is the way we connect, I believe. And so I'm hoping that you allow yourself to open that door. Now, what I'd like to do is we're going to move into our heart to heart segment. So every Soul Talk, we will be having a heart to heart segment, and that is a 15-minute space where I'm going to take your questions, maybe your insights, your reflections, your real life experiences. And so you can, if you're on live right now, you can call in and ask your question. You can also write in the chat and ask your question. Or I also have some questions that are coming in early. So if you are somebody that's watching the replays and you're like, Sunny, Tuesday at noon, I can't be on live, then you can always go to the website and you can get an opportunity to fill out your heart to heart question there and send it in advance. And then I will answer at least one of the heart to heart questions that comes in that way in each episode as well. So right now, guys, there's no right or wrong way to ask a question. Just open your heart, speak from your heart. You can use that caller button. So those of you that are actually in and live with me right now, if you're on YouTube, you're going to need to type in your question in the chat. But if you are in the actual live app, so you're kind of backstage watching live, then you can go ahead and I think, what does it say? It says What does it say, Chris? You tell me. I think maybe it says go live or it says call in or something like that. So you can call in with your question. Request live call in. Yes, Brandy, thank you. So request live call in. So if you want to call in and ask a question, go ahead and do that. Request live call in, and I will take your questions in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and start with one of the questions that was sent in advance. So here's a question that was sent in advance. And so the question is, how do I honor my mom's friendship with my ex boyfriend's mother while not allowing it to trigger or upset me? I recognize my mom is lonely and this friendship benefits her. I want to respect their friendship, but I don't want her to have a relationship with my ex boyfriend, which she says she does not. Any tips or guidance for navigating when two people break up, but the mothers remain friends? All right. That's an interesting question, don't you think? And how many of you have experienced that one way or another way, right? Maybe you've been on the mother side, maybe you've been on the child side. Um, and so it's interesting because the answer that comes to me is that we're all learning and we're all growing. And, when I was growing up, my little brother actually, my mother became friends with two of my brother's ex-girlfriends' mothers. Close, like very close to them. They're still friends today. He's not in the relationship with either one of them, but they're still close today. And so this is actually, I think, more common than what we might expect because they're in kind of the same time of life. They have the same similar kind of connection during that time when you guys are together. And so it's difficult then for them to just pull away and separate from that relationship. And this would be my answer. First, I would ask myself, what inside of me is scared? What am I afraid of? Am I afraid that she's going to talk about things that are happening in my life and I don't want the mother to know that, or I don't want the ex-boyfriend to know that? Is it that I'm afraid I'm going to lose control? Is it that I'm afraid that they're going to um, tell things to my mom that maybe I didn't think that she should know? And I'm afraid that, information or experiences are going to come out. Am I afraid that she's picking a side? Like if she maintains a relationship with the mother, that she doesn't love or care enough about me. Now, the reason I'm asking you to inquire within is because usually there's some form of fear happening there. And we need to look at where that fear is coming from. Maybe there's also a level of respect. Like you might be feeling like if she respected me and if she loved me, then she wouldn't continue this relationship. But I don't think that that's a fair analysis because oftentimes maybe they began to develop the relationship because of you and your ex, but maybe then the relationship actually grew on its own and that they have an actual friendship that is separate from anything. You two were just the catalyst that brought them together. And if that brings her more fulfillment in her life, again, then what am I afraid of? Right? What's really underlying that question? So to me, I would have a conversation with my mom and maybe it would be, hey, I would just appreciate it if, I understand you have a relationship and you have a right to. I'm actually grateful that you have somebody that you connect with and that you enjoy and that you love. And I would just appreciate that I'm not in the conversation. I know I can't control you and you get to have whatever conversations you want, but that would make me feel safer in this situation at this time because something feels unsettled or something I'm afraid of. And I would just be honest about it. Okay. Now, otherwise, you can try to control and try to manipulate and try to say, hey, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You can judge, but that isn't going to move the needle and it's not going to feel good to you, which is why you're asking the question. So ultimately, anytime we feel unsettled, we need to go within first, see why we're feeling unsettled. And almost always, friends, it's going to be fear. So what am I afraid of? Right? Maybe I'm afraid of losing the respect of my mom if she hears something, or I'm afraid that the boyfriend's going to weasel himself back in or something like that. Be honest about that fear. and then communicate it. So that would be my answer for that question that was sent in. And thank you very, very much to VL for that question. Okay, let's see. So request live call in. Any friends that are going to call in live? And let's see, I've got a question in the chat. Let's answer this question. Question regarding how the way we connect changes over time. With all the training you've had over the years, do you usually see a phase of common progression? Okay, that's a great question. So, in the beginning, very beginning, like 42 years ago, the way that the way I saw my guardian angel was like that winged being above my bed. That began changing in the first couple of years. It started shifting to orbs, if you're familiar with that term, like literally like lights. And I started seeing them first in my peripheral vision, and then it started coming forward. That actually is very common for people to begin to see, just like almost like sparkly lights or little lights in the peripheral. And then as they start to not, number one, not get scared because I don't want to scare you, then that energy would start coming forward, and so that you can actually stay focused on it and not get afraid, because spirit world never wants to create more fear. They're really here to help support, but sometimes the fear comes up not because of them but because of you. And so we have to learn how to acknowledge their presence without that fear, without that um, um, reaction. And so they want to come in ways that um, feel safe. Okay, come in ways that feel safe to you. So for me, that started happening within the first couple of years, and the majority of the ways that the messaging was coming through and the signs were coming through was through feeling and and through the visual experience of the lights. But then I started expanding into a lot more auditory, like hearing them, like I literally felt like I was taking dictation, right? That started getting more and more consistent, and then just knowing. And so the different ways that we receive our guidance, right, is seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing. And generally, whatever your strongest attribute, the one that you've used for a long, long time, and the one that maybe you have relied on over time, um, has it starts to expand. And as it starts to expand, it absolutely will change and grow and shift. So if you were a feeler to begin with, then you might start having more experiences of knowing. And part of that is because we have the access to all of these ways that spirit speaks to us, but we don't always bring them into conscious awareness. And so we want to start acknowledging them and learning how to expand beyond the ones that feel comfortable. So for some people, if they're visual and then they start feeling that, that doesn't feel comfortable. So then they're going to have more and more experience of that to open that channel up, because ultimately the goal is to have all of the channels open. So you're seeing, feeling, hearing, and knowing. You're an open vessel to connect with the spirit world, not because we're trying to get out of the physical world, but because we are a spirit being in a physical experience, and we're meant to not separate ourselves as just a human being. We are a spiritual being and a human being, and we're meant to integrate those two, own our gifts, communicate with spirit in strong, powerful, loving ways. That is the goal. That is the intention. And raising our vibration and our frequency and using the tools that we have access to, which are everywhere now, to be able to expand our intuition and to raise our vibration, raise our consciousness, um, uh, ascend, create more ascension. That is an ascended master. They have ascended beyond just the human physical identity, and incorporated the spiritual gifts and tools as a physical being, right? So it's the integration, I would say, and it will continuously change. It still does change for me at different times. I notice, uh, I guess I would say phases. phases where I'm like feeling more and more. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we're going to start. Like I had so many dreams last night. And I woke up this morning, I'm trying to write them all down, not because I think that they're all going to happen, but generally when I have dreams, they're prophetic dreams. And so there were some that really spoke to me that I wrote down. I actually told my mom one of them this morning, because it would impact her. And, um, and so the expansion, friends, your intuition is going to grow and expand. And, um, and I hope to be a part of that. So thank you. That was a great question. Um, so happy to have all of you beautiful souls here. I see many of you here live. And if you enjoy this, then come and join me every Tuesday. So we're going to go ahead and close for today. I want to just take a moment and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for showing up, and I want to thank you for being willing to pause, and for showing up in this space to choose awareness, because that's why we're here. We're here to choose awareness and presence and consciousness. I'm here every Tuesday, same time, same place. Friends, if this episode gave you any support or guidance, if you enjoyed it, please like it, follow, subscribe, share, share on social, YouTube. If you would love to share the replay, go to YouTube. You'll see it right there, to anybody that might need it. And if you like this topic, please check out my 7-week program on the Shift Network. Or again, shoot my office an email, connect@schooloflight.biz, and we will send you the information so you can go check it out, because I'm super excited about this 7-week course. And please, as we end, remember that when we allow our divinity, that connection to spirit, to live through our heart, when we allow our divinity to guide our humanity, that's when love becomes the thing that we live every single day. And you're not alone. And I love you. I'll see you next time.
So self-service, that's the way. Welcome to Soul Talk, shine today.